Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. My day is going absolutely epic. I don't know if you saw the first video I put up, but I'm going to mention it here as well because I'm still so giddy over it. One of my subscribers and a Patreon actually sent us some gifts, and yeah, I am so pumped. Greg, thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate it. He sent my daughter a beautiful little Christmas decoration. My daughter's asked me not to take it out the box because she's saving it. She's Christmas obsessed. She's saving it for when she has her first Christmas tree in her first house, and she's going to put it up on her. This is going to be the decoration she puts up first, she says. And then he got my son, Garen. He got him Snakes of the Midwest. It's like a little informational booklet. It's really awesome, actually. It's got little bite-sized bits of information, which when you're young, I think that's the best way to learn. You get the facts, and that's it. There's no drill, nothing like that. And he is so pumped with this. He is so happy. When he gets back from his hockey practice in a minute, he'll probably come and get it from me. So if the door opens, I do apologize. And then Greg got me an Ohio State flag. Well, Ohio State flag, and it's going to go up on the wall here eventually. I'm so thankful, Greg. This is my first ever state flag, or flag of any sort, really, and I'm so happy and so thankful, mate. I really do appreciate it. This is going to go up on the wall as soon as I get the fixings. It's going on a blanket on the floor. I'm not just putting it on the floor. I'll put a blanket down. As soon as I've got some fixings to put it up, I'll put it up. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Anyway, today we are going to be reacting to the top 10 most beautiful states in America, and I thought it was a really fitting video because I got my first state flag. If I can, and when I come over there, I'll definitely be buying some. I'm going to probably fill this whole wall up, whether my wife likes it or not. Yeah, I just love them. I think it's so cool that each state has its own flag, and yeah, thank you. Well, not thank you, but yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And without further ado, let's check out the top 10 most beautiful states in America.
Beautiful states in America. Number 10, Maine. I know you're probably thinking, what? That doesn't look like Maine. Well,
Yeah.
That's because it is.
South Dakota, isn't it?
It was really hard to choose which state to put at number 10, so I'm starting the list off with an honorable mention. South Dakota. Wait, what? South Dakota?
What?
Yeah, it might come as a surprise if you've never been here, but that's because it's incredibly underrated. I was blown away on my first visit, and not just because the wind cave. From natural grasslands to the Badlands to
I nearly made a really bad dad joke there about the wind cave. Also, why do they call it the Badlands? Does anybody know? Stick it down in the comments why they call it the Badlands.
Bearfish Canyon and Custer State Park to the Black Hills, which are a heck of a lot more than just 4 dead guys' faces on a rock. The diversity of nature in the Mount Rushmore state is mind-boggling. I seriously have no clue why it's one of the least visited states in the country. But enough with my South Dakota obsession. Actual number 10 is Maine. You might not have given the Pine Tree State much thought if you live outside of New England, but as a New Englander myself, my family would take trips up here almost every summer, and let me tell ya,
I'm actually subscribed to a guy who's in Maine. I don't know if he's still in Maine. What's he called? Fowler's Makery and Mischief. He's like an outdoorsy channel, and he's in Maine. He's always catching Maine lobster and stuff. Maine looks awesome.
It is beautiful. Outside the Portland metro area, no, not the one in Oregon, the state is pretty much just untouched, gorgeous nature and really cute, charming small towns, which means there are endless opportunities for adventure, whether you want to hike, ski, swim, kayak, hunt, or fish. And if you're lucky, or maybe unlucky if you get too close, you might even see a moose. Maine's honestly one of the best kept secrets on the East Coast. From jutting cliffs to stunning beaches, if you include all the islands, Maine actually has more miles of coastline than even California. And speaking of islands, have you seen Mount Desert Island? It's home to Acadia National Park, which is pretty much the crown jewel of Maine.
View.
There really is no other place in America.
I love that. I know I say I hate the cold, but I love it when the leaves change. That's like the sort of the best time. You know when it's crisp outside in the morning, it can be a bit crisp, but then it warms up throughout the day and all the leaves are changing. That is probably one of my favorite times of the year, although it does like freak me out that winter's coming. But yeah, I love the changing
Which is pretty much the crown jewel of Maine. There really is no other place in America quite like it. Number 9. Michigan. Now, this might be surprising too, but Michigan's actually another state with more coastline than California. Granted, it's just surrounded by really big lakes, but they're so big that it almost feels like the ocean. You may have heard of the famously old-fashioned Mackinac Island, where cars are forbidden and horses and buggies transport you back in time around the Victorian town. But have you heard of Isle Royale National Park? The 400-island archipelago is actually the least visited national park in the contiguous United States, mainly because the only way to get there is a 3-hour-long ferry. But if you make the trip, or honestly just go anywhere in the Upper Peninsula, the wildlife and scenery you encounter will literally feel like a movie. And let's not forget the multicolored Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, the isolated hilly beaches at Sleeping Bear Dunes, and Headlands International Dark Sky Park, which is one of the best places to see the stars, and if you're lucky, the Northern Lights. I could go on and on about the beauty of Michigan. I mean, there are freaking ice caves and a rock jutting out of the water that looks like a turnip.
Like a mushroom. No, it doesn't look like a mushroom. He said turnip. Look at that. Okay, yeah, I suppose it looks more like a turnip, but that looks beautiful. What a photo.
Jutting out of the water that looks like a turnip. Number 8. Oregon. When you think of Oregon, you probably just think of hipsters in Portland, or maybe something like this or this. But the Beaver State has pretty much every type of biome imaginable. You probably didn't know this was in Oregon, or this. The ecosystems here are seriously so dang diverse that each region feels like its own country. From beautiful beaches bordered by sinkholes, sand dunes, and giant rock islands, to lush national forests teeming with literally thousands of streams and waterfalls, to charming artsy towns like Ashland, Bend, and Hood River, the entire state just feels enchanted. The Cascade Range also runs through the middle of Oregon and is home to some of the most beautiful mountains in the country, and Crater Lake National Park, which is literally a giant blue lake at the top of a volcanic crater. It's honestly one of the most unique and gorgeous settings I've ever seen. And I haven't even mentioned the eastern half of the state, with places like the Painted Hills and Owyhee Canyonlands that you'll swear must be photoshopped. Oh, and there's also Hell's Canyon, aka the deepest...
What the hell was the seal for?
Where must be photoshopped. Oh, and there's also Hell's Canyon, aka the deepest gorge in North America, with a nearly 8,000-foot vertical drop into the Snake River. Needless to say, there's a lot more to Oregon than just Portland. Number 7. Colorado. Denver might be overrated, but there's a reason why so many people are moving to, or at least vacationing in the Centennial State. Take a drive on I-70 and you'll see why. Every curve of the interstate reveals a breathtaking view of the Rockies before following the east.
Sometimes I moan about driving, and even here in Slovakia, we're very lucky in the sense of there's great scenery. It's great scenery. When I used to drive in England, I hated it because I'd mostly be on the M25 for work or motorways. It was only when I went to Cornwall or Devon or something that I really enjoyed driving, or Scotland. But yeah, look at that scenery. You can't complain driving in scenery like that. At least I love to drive in scenery like
Eagle
that.
and Colorado rivers through the canyons into a landscape that looks like Mars. And this is honestly the least scenic route. The mountains are just gorgeous all around, with 58 peaks exceeding 14,000 feet. By far the most of any state. In fact, there are only 4 states in the country that even have one 14,000 footer. But while the Front Range is magical, Colorado is so much more than just a beautiful mountainous region full of world-class ski resorts and hikes. Head to the southwest near Durango and you'll find some of the most well-preserved Native American pueblos at Mesa Verde National Park. Or you could head to Colorado Springs to find some of the most beautiful red rock formations at Garden of the Gods. And Colorado's also home to the tallest sand dunes in North America. This state is honestly so diverse that even if you spent your entire life here, it still wouldn't be long enough to explore all the unique environments the area has to offer. Number 6. Washington. Seattle and rain are probably the first 2 words that come to mind when you think of Washington. But this state is so much more. Don't get me wrong, on the days where it isn't misty and rainy and you can actually see, Seattle's one of the most picturesque cities in the world. But the constant rain kinda is what makes the Evergreen State stay, well, evergreen. Speaking of evergreen, North Cascades National Park might be one of the most beautiful places on Earth. I mean, have you seen Mount Shuksan? Well, probably not.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. I know, like, especially in England, and that Americans get a bit of a hard time. They're like, oh, they never travel. They don't know anything about geography. Why would you travel when you've got everything, literally everything, from desert to snow to oceans to bloody volcanic lakes? You've got everything, and you don't even have to leave your own country. Flippin' heck, I would never travel. I'd be happy as Larry just cruising around. I could travel America the rest of my life and still not see it all. It is amazing.
Because it's also one of the least visited national parks, which is weird since it's only a 2-hour drive from Seattle. But even closer to Seattle are the majestic Olympic Mountains, and even closer is Mount Rainier, which is the most prominent peak in the continental United States, and also an active volcano. But hey, I'm not here to judge Seattleites' life decisions. It really was hard to choose which Pacific Northwest state to put higher on this list, but while Oregon is very geographically diverse,
So
Washington
beautiful,
is even more
that.
diverse. The Evergreen State is home to 63 different mountain ranges, the largest expanse of temperate rainforest in the U.S., tons of
even
waterfalls,
rainforest.
rivers, lakes, and ecologically unique islands, the Columbia River Gorge and the Scablands, the Palouse Hills, and charming mountain towns like Leavenworth.
Whoa,
you
too many
know,
people for
maybe
me.
it is worth living under an active volcano to be near all that. Number 5. Utah. From the Rocky Mountains to desert canyons, it isn't hard to see why Utah has the third most national parks in the country. You've probably heard of Zion and Arches, and no, that's not the moon, that's just Canyonlands National Park. There's also Bryce Canyon and
man.
Capitol Reef National
Holy
Park
crap.
and Canyonlands National Park. There's also
That doesn't even look like it's Earth, doesn't it? It's so crazy. That is mental.
Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef National Park,
sandstone?
and a boatload of national monuments and forests, which are equally as impressive. As you can see, Utah shares a lot of similarities with Colorado and Arizona, but also has a lot of uniquely Utah things too. And I'm not talking about fry sauce. Besides the national parks, there are 43 state parks, and no, I'm not about to list them all, but just look at how pretty they are.
They're
The
so
coolest
diverse.
thing about Utah, in my opinion, though, is that most of the nature is completely
insane.
untouched. And aside from the super popular national parks and ski resorts like Zion and Park City, it's almost never overcrowded with tourists. If it had a coastline, Utah would probably be number 1 on this list. But it doesn't, and before you say, hey, what about the Great Salt Lake? Nobody actually likes how the Great Salt Lake looks, or smells for that matter.
I wouldn't
Number
know.
4. California. I know a lot of you are probably wondering, why isn't California number 1? I mean, it is the most geographically diverse state in the country by far, housing nearly every type of climate zone in the world. But the one thing keeping it out of even the top 3 on my list
Bridges amaze me. Like, how the hell? Like, they're amazing.
is just all the overcrowding and pollution.
Yeah,
Even though
too many
most of the
people.
national parks are 4 to 5 hours out of the cities, there are still so many people. Sure, there are a few secret spots
Whoa.
where you can find some peace and quiet, but if you aren't a local and don't know what you're doing, you're never gonna find them. What you will find is 3,400 miles of pristine coastline and some of the best beaches in the world. To the south, you have La Jolla and Laguna, but more north, there's also Carmel, Moonstone Beach, Bowling Ball Beach, and the incredible Big Sur. But actually, don't go
love to
there
drive
because
that
the
road.
locals do everything they can to hide the best spots from tourists. So why don't you head on over to one of the 9 national parks or over 300 state parks instead? Both numbers being the most of any state.
Flippin'
Try
heck.
Yosemite, the Redwoods, or even Death Valley. Seriously, I cannot state this enough. Almost every type of scenery imaginable is here. The problem is that people, litter, and their pollution is destroying the environment, and not nearly enough funds are being allocated to protect it. But what can I say? It's not like money grows on trees. And even if it did, California would have probably burned through it by now. Pun intended. Number 3,
Not funny.
Hawaii. Hawaii is by far the smallest
Oh
state.
man, some of that stuff going on in Hawaii, Maui, is it? Flipping heck, man. My heart goes out to those guys and girls and anybody affected by that stuff. A few people have asked me to do a couple of reactions on it, and I don't think it's right to react to something like that. My reaction to it, quite honestly, is it's so sad, and it's horrible, really. So yeah, I don't want to do any reactions to stuff like that. It's not respectful to the people who are suffering to show them on I don't know. That's just my opinion.
State on this list. So I guess it goes to show that size doesn't matter. Because what the Aloha State lacks in size, it makes up for in sheer beauty. There really isn't a single part of the islands that isn't jaw-droppingly gorgeous. Each of the 7 inhabited islands is entirely different in its own way, but some notable views are the Nepali Coast and Waimea Canyon on Kauai, the bamboo forest, Honokohau Falls, and the road to Hana on Maui, the sea cliffs of Molokai, Lanikai Beach, and the Cocoa Head crater on Oahu, and Mauna Kea and Volcanic National Park on Big Island. In fact, the Big Island alone has 11 of the world's 13 climate zones. From the history to the culture to the waterfalls, volcanoes, hiking, and world-class snorkeling and surfing, Hawaii is one of the most unique and diverse states in the country. Not to mention the nearly perfect weather with tropical temperatures and 270 sunny days a year. Number 2. Montana. In contrast to the last 2 states, Montana has exactly 0 miles of coastline. So how the heck did it make it so high on this list? If you're seriously asking that question, you need to visit the Big Sky State, where
I like the look of Montana. It's just, it's beautiful, isn't it?
yes, the sky really does seem bigger. We all know Colorado is the Rocky Mountain state, but honestly, the Rockies in Montana remain unparalleled. The mountains loom majestically over vast and colorful valleys dotted by the lakes, rivers, and wildlife that run through them. A trip to Yellowstone will leave you bewildered by the power of nature, but the lesser-known Glacier National Park is actually, in my opinion, the most beautiful national park in America. And in the eastern half of the state, you have a complete contrast with places like Makoshika State Park with its badlands and dinosaur fossils. There are actually 55 state parks in the state, including the Lewis and Clark Caverns, Flathead Lake, Palisade and Kootenai Falls, and Bighorn Canyon. But honestly, the entire state could be a national park. Drive through just about anywhere here, and you'll have a hard time finding a view that doesn't look like a painting, even in the urban areas like Missoula or Bozeman. And on a clear night, you might even see the northern lights. Now, before we get to number 1, leave a like, subscribe, and let me know what you think the most beautiful state is. But without further ado...
Yeah, let me know what you think the most beautiful state is. I know a lot of you have probably clicked off. If you haven't clicked off, let me know in the comments. It's quite a long one.
Number 1. Alaska. Speaking of the Northern Lights,
Alaska
could
made number 1
really be anything but? Alaska is more grand, vast, and untamed than any other state. And it's not even close. It even has more coastline than every other state combined. And that coast varies widely from the volcanic Aleutian Islands to glacier-lined black sand beaches to craggy cliffs to forested fjords. Sure, it does get really cold in some parts, but there is a heck of a lot more to Alaska than just snow-capped mountains. The Last Frontier is home to 8 national parks, each featuring incredibly different landscapes, ranging from Denali, home of the tallest mountain in North America, to Kenai Fjords, Gates of the Arctic, Glacier Bay, and Wrangell St. Elias, which is actually the largest national park in the nation. And while there are also 156 state parks to boot, Alaska's still the least visited state in the US, which might be due to the fact that there aren't many roads leading to the parks. You'll actually have to charter a plane to get to most of them, but that's also why the population density is just
elk?
1 person per square mile. So there are literally thousands of miles of untouched unique wilderness, and you're probably more likely...
Does anybody know the difference between an elk and a deer? Or is an elk just a type of deer? I've always wondered. I've never really looked it up.
to run into a bear, moose, or musk ox than another person in the nature here. Where else can you find over half the world's glaciers, fjords all along the coast, rainforests, volcanoes, the 10 tallest mountains in the country, and even sand dunes? Alaska is by far the most beautiful state in America.
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a...
Let me know what you think. Which is the most beautiful state in America? Do you agree with his list or do you disagree with his list? I don't... Oh, stop. What is going on? My laptop is doing its own thing again today. I don't know whether I agree or disagree. I have no place to make that sort of judgment. That's one way of being politically correct, isn't it? Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you again, Greg. If you're watching, mate, you're an absolute legend. And my kids and I, you made our day. You made our whole week. Thank you very much. Have an amazing rest of the day, guys. And I will see you all in the next video. Peace.